Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by my co-host, Katie Harris.
Thanks for letting me join you. I get to do that sometimes.
Oh, it's a great time, as always. Founding partner here at Spot On Solutions. Katie has done a lot of podcasts with me, and we've been able to talk to some really cool people. And today is no different. We get to talk to an old friend of Katie's. You've known this person for quite a while, so I'll let you kick things off and introduce our guest today.
My privilege. Chuck Violand, really, do you need any introduction in this industry, Chuck? But today I get to introduce you as Chuck Violand author, so that's kind of fun to do. Today, Chuck is coming on to talk about his new book, which I'm going to let him talk about, but I think it's really fun. When I first got into this industry, and we started Spot On Solutions, that was 12 years ago. Do you believe that? And the very first thing we did was got on an airplane and flew to Ohio and sat down with Chuck. And I will always remember sitting across the table from you, telling you, hey, we're starting this digital marketing company and we're going to help restorers. And you asked us some great questions. And then I remember you said, hey, you know what? If you can go out and make a difference for restorers businesses, I'll open doors for you. And man, you have been true to that word. So thank you very much.
Remember that visit well, Katie.
That was a lot of fun. So Chuck, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about your new book that just came out.
It's called Forging Dynasty Businesses, the competitive edge of enduring teams. And it was, do you want the long version or do you want the short version?
I want the best version. Give me the best version.
Well, the starting point on the book really goes back to 2018. Came across, a couple of things were colliding at that time. One, the employment world was really tight. I mean, if you remember back then, you couldn't find people even to show up for interviews.
Yeah.
And so I came across an article in a Harvard Business Review magazine, and it dealt with huge companies, GE, Google, big multinational companies, who were arranging their employment to offload non-critical services that they're doing so that they could focus on the things that they do best. As a result of that, they were able to pay the people that they kept better wages and retain them. And it created a virtuous cycle where they could just continue to attract better people, working more productively, producing better products that led to more profits. I thought, you know what? In reading that, if multinational corporations could do that, why can't small businesses like the clients that we were working with? So I sent an internal email to our consulting staff about that. We got together, chatted about it, and thought, you know what? It makes a ton of sense. So we got busy writing a workbook. It was called Culture Forge. I don't know if you remember it, Katie. But it was a workbook, and it was designed to help our clients and anybody who wanted to buy it identify issues within their business that was preventing them from doing the same thing, attracting the right people, keeping the right people, and being able to compete better. Basically viewing people as a strategy rather than as an expense. And so we took that, developed an app for it, and it was effective. Then what we decided was we wanted to get the concept into more people's hands. So we basically condensed it. A couple of years ago, got together, Tom Klein and I mainly, got together and condensed it. And Forging Dynasty Businesses is really an easier to read, condensed version of Culture Forge. And we had a publisher that actually picked it up. So my first book, I published on my own. This one, we had a publisher, Business Expert Press, say that they'd like to publish the thing, which was nice. And so that's how we ended up with this book.
I actually copied this part out of here because I thought it was so cool. One of the things I've done for the last 12 years is I've gone to your business planning retreats that you have every year in different places. And in your book, it says, this book is written in a conversational, non-academic style that acknowledges the troubleshooting mindset, yet short attention span and easily distracted nature of many entrepreneurs. and I just thought, It's so true. But I also thought, as I've sat in the business planning retreats, I'm like, this just described those retreats, right? Where you walk around and it's just this conversational, not academic, like just like real, like tell me what you need. Let's have a real conversation. Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out. Cut through the bull, right? And find answers that are gonna work. And I just thought, man, when I read that sentence, I'm like, I've seen your team do this in real life for the last 12 years at those business planning retreats. And then I read how everybody can do it throughout this book. So I thought that was cool.
Well, I wrote that comment about myself, Katie. So
well, and I saw myself in it, so I appreciated it. Yes.
No, yeah. It's perfect, right? Because I think most entrepreneurs feel that exact way. They want to be spoken to directly. They don't want to necessarily have someone, I don't know, stroke their ego, right? For lack of a better phrase, right? Like they want, especially if they go to like a situation like a business planning retreat, they're going there to hopefully set goals and make plans to help their business grow. And so they don't want Chuck to come and sit next to them and be like, oh, you guys are doing just so good. You're just, everything's so great, right? Like they want you to come to them and be like, okay, here's what I think you should do. These are the problems you're having. This is how you can solve those problems. And I love that, we kind of started talking before we were recording that, I love personally that after all of your years of experience, Chuck, and that you've built multiple successful businesses, that for you with this book and with a lot of your coaching, it's come back to people. I love that, in 2018, that was a big focus for you when you noticed kind of this hiring landscape. I think during COVID, there was a huge problem with that as well. And since then, I think it's been a problem for the last 5 years. I don't think it's necessarily gone away. And so for you, as you've built the, multiple successful businesses, was there an epiphany along the way that you were like, wow, like people are the biggest, most important thing? Or is it something maybe from the beginning when you very first started your first business that you were like, I'm going to always take care of and be, focused on the people? What kind of happened for you along the path there?
Hayden, what I love to be able to tell you that I've always felt that people were my biggest asset. Unfortunately, that would not be truthful. I was early in my career, I was way too arrogant and way too foolish to think that way. But I think it was when Violand Management, when I got that started, and then shortly after that, when I started hiring people, for that business. And I was very fortunate to get some very good people early on. I still marvel at the fact that they came on board, but they did. And when they came on board, I recognized, holy mackerel, these are some really sharp people. They looked at things differently. They made different decisions. They had different life experiences. Most of them were very successful in previous careers, and they brought that with them. And it didn't take long for me to realize that, hey, I need to start listening, and I need to start taking the lessons from these people. And they were and continue to be an enormous asset to me as a business owner. As we work with clients, we see the same thing. And for those clients who are able to set themselves aside long enough to recognize that, typically they're the ones who can attract because they can identify those people and then keep them because their egos don't get in the way. And so it's such a huge lesson, I suppose, is the word that I want to use when an owner, when an entrepreneur finally gets to that point. But frequently we've got to get out of our own ways, as was the case with me.
I run into it all the time. I've ran into it as I've grown my own businesses, knowing when to let go of things, right? And trust other people. And as we work with businesses, we hear it all the time. And so what advice maybe would you give to entrepreneurs who are listening, right? How do you start to trust people? Or what do you look for as you bring people in to join your team?
The first thing, as we look at the people that we bring on board, let's go with that place first, maybe. Looking at the people we bring on board, I think we make mistakes early on in our careers. Hopefully we learn from them, where we attract and we bring on people who are like us. Normally we like them, but usually that's not the people we need in our businesses. We need alternate skill sets. I need people around me who are highly organized because I am not particularly organized. And so I've been very fortunate to find patient people who are also very organized and help me stay organized and help me look good in the things that we try to put out of Violand management. So the first thing is to put out of our notion that we need to find somebody like us. And we need to be looking for those skills that will complement what we have rather than just repeat what we have. Once we do that, and a lot of this goes back to our egos, and I don't want to overplay that, but I see that play itself out so often with small business owners, and not just arrogance, but in subtle ways, where we don't listen, where we assume that we've got the right answer rather than asking somebody else for their opinion. Those are all examples of that. And so being able to set that aside, get around that in ourselves, and be open to other people's ideas. And Katie, you were talking, I think that you mentioned earlier about wanting to control things. I don't know if that was the word that you used, but I think that many of us as entrepreneurs, we do like to control our environments. And if we're going to insist on that, we are absolutely going to limit the caliber of people that we bring to our organizations. And we all know the old yarn that the more you feel you're in control, the less you really are in control. Until you've seen that at work in action, you don't really grasp it. But once you see it, you understand it completely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think, the word that I always keep going, or I don't want to say always, but that I keep thinking of when you're talking here, Chuck and Katie, when you've been mentioned too, is it comes back to a lot of business owners' ego, that they don't want to relinquish some of that control, right? That business owners, they feel like I'm the only one that can do it this way. I'm the only one that knows how to do it this way. I'm going to do it the best. And so I don't want to, I don't have maybe the humility, ego, whatever kind of word that you want to use there, but that you don't necessarily want to give up some of that control. And, we've had conversations, I think, over the last year or so here at Spot On Solutions and with teammates here that we are, Katie is big on this. And I think that's what's helped promote a lot of our success is we're big on hiring and bringing in people that are order makers, not order takers. And I think that's a concept to think of, right? Like there's always going to be situations where you need someone to go do a task, and that's fine. And that's, every business is going to have those types of people and those types of situations. But I think true business growth happens when you've got people on your team that are maybe better than you at certain things, right? That are maybe smarter than you at certain things. And I think that's where true business growth happens. I don't know. Am I off on that?
I mean, I'm super lucky. And I think, Chuck, you would second this, like, just surround yourself with people that are way smarter than you all day long, right? Like, for me, that's not hard. That's for me, it's not hard either. I just look around and I have smarter people than me everywhere I look, for sure. But I think that, I wanted to kind of touch on maybe some of the chapters in your book, right? Because I thought I was just so, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I was like, I can see in every step of my business these being important, right? And so I just wanted to just maybe touch on just a couple of them, and then maybe you can talk for a minute about a couple of your favorites, if that's okay. But I really liked this one because it goes to what we were just talking about right here. And you start right out of the gate with it because I think it's the most important thing for us to really hear is making room for high-performing team members. And that's it, right? That's chapter 1, making room for high-performing team members. Like, check your ego, make room for those people, and surround yourself by smart people. And I know that the minute we started bringing that caliber of people into the room, like, you could feel the business just rise. And that's an exciting place to be. And so I think this chapter was great. Anything stand out for you in that chapter? I know we've talked about a few of the things, but that's a difference maker to me.
Katie, we use the term, at least I use the term here, I refer to it as oxygen in the room. When an owner's ego or just their presence sucks up all the oxygen in a room, there's no air for anybody else to breathe. And so other people who rely on that oxygen in their own lives, they're not going to stick around. They can't stick around. They're going to find a place where they can actually produce, where they can actually contribute. if you think about most small business owners, we're alpha personalities, and that's okay. That's fine. But if we don't recognize that we also need other alphas in order to grow this thing beyond us, and we don't provide the oxygen in that room to attract and keep those other alphas, and then to listen to them, to bring out their strengths while helping them sidestep any weaknesses that they have in their behaviors, we're never going to grow it beyond ourselves. And so we have to be aware of the interplay between, and I'm not suggesting that we shelve our alpha personality. We don't do that. It's a strength. But we want to be able to blend it, to align it with the other alphas in our organization. And they need the oxygen to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciated you sending this book over so we could kind of get a glance at it in advance. And I read that first chapter and I was like, man, you just read that first chapter and you're already going to be winning in business, I think, because I just think that's such a huge key to it. I've often thought, like, people walk into a room with a smell, right? And sometimes it just stinks. And you don't know why, but you're like, man, that stinks. And it's that same thing, like, suck the air out of the room and you don't know why, but you can just kind of tell it. But chapter 1 right there, if you learn that one lesson from this book, anybody that's listening, I'm telling you, you got your money's worth out of it right there, because I think that's a huge lesson. So I also really loved, I love the performance management. I think this is hard. Like, managing performance is a tough lesson to learn. So you want to talk a little bit about, managing your team, holding people accountable, that whole bucket of being an entrepreneur and an owner right there.
I'll remember that many of us entrepreneurs, let's go back to that short attention span thing.
Yeah.
We're great quick starters, but man, following through on stuff is really tough. And then expecting us to follow through with a tough conversation. And my experience has been that many of us who are entrepreneurs are also conflict avoiders. So we're going to kick that can down the road as long as we can, having to have a tough conversation, which is usually what holding people accountable is.
Well, we like people to like us, man. We just want people to like us.
Exactly right. Absolutely. We're nice folks. So it's difficult for us. I think we come into this thing at a disadvantage because our personalities aren't wired that way. Most of us anyway, aren't wired that way. And we've got to learn that skill, or we have to bring somebody on board who has that skill and can bring it to our organizations.
Yeah, it's tough to do. And I think, we had our quarterly planning and annual planning yesterday. And so this is a topic it's on top of our minds when we think about stuff like this. So we're thinking about, how can we, manage our team better? How can we help them be more successful? Is it following up on things? And yeah, there's probably some pieces to that, but I think at the end of the day, it's like, do we care about those team members' success? And I think that's what all of it stems back to, right? Like, we obviously want them to be efficient and perform well and do all of these things, but I think it's got to come from a good place. It's got to come from a place of, man, I really want so-and-so to be successful. How can I help them accomplish it? It's not, hey, did they check all of these boxes in a checklist that they were supposed to do? It's like, okay, if they missed a couple of things, what was the reason for that? Was there some challenges that they were facing that I need to, or there's some roadblocks that I need to remove? Like, what can I do to help them be as successful as possible?
Which is the heart of your book. So good.
Yeah.
Katie, you know our organization. You've gotten to know us for years. So a little peek behind the scenes here. Just like you got done yesterday, writing your strategic plan, we do ours next week. Okay, so the team is coming in to write the plan. But we've written our plan forever. I mean, for a million years. And I've always been the one running it. I drive the thing throughout the year. And then over the last several years, our general manager, Tim Hall, general manager, has gradually taken that responsibility over. And so he has now driven the plan for several years. Nobody drives a plan like Tim Hall drives a plan. Okay. Far better than I ever did. And so, but he's much better at that accountability piece and following through on things and following metrics on that than I was. And so he does a far better job than I did.
Talk about that just a little bit, because you and Tim, like, different personalities, right? And what was that process? You write about this. I think it's the last chapter in your book. kind of changing roles a little bit and what that looks like. How does that maybe start to feel, right? Stepping back, it's empowering, it's awesome, it's exciting. I'm imagining it's also a little bit hard.
It is hard. I mean, it would be great to say, oh no, it's wonderful. It's hard from an emotional perspective. There's no question. And I, with all transparency, I've had a coach that I've used to help me work through those things because they were difficult. When you've owned something for 36 years and you built it up from its infancy, there are emotional attachments to it. And Tim is exceptional at that. I also know that I have a role in that. And I need to understand what my role is, swim lane, if you want to call it that. And Tim has one. And we've been very fortunate, very blessed that the two of us seem to have worked together very well for a lot of years. He just celebrated 15 years with us. So we've worked together for a very long time, very well. Now, of course, I think the people in our organization would be a better judge of that than I am. But it seems to have worked. But it's not without its challenges.
Well, I can't think of anybody better to really write and give all this advice and share the experience, than you in forging Dynasty Businesses. Because I just felt like every part I read, I'm like, man, I have watched you and your team live this and coach this, on the front lines for the last 12 years. And so I appreciated every part. When I read it, I'm like, I see them do that. I've heard them say that, right? I mean, our clients are your clients. And so I see your clients putting those things into action. And I thought you did a beautiful job of putting those things that you live every day into words for everybody to go and implement in their own businesses.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And I would be remiss if I didn't, give a shout out. Tom Klein did a lot of the heavy lifting on that writing, as well as Tim and Scott and John and Bill. And then Karen Tersley.
Can you do anything without Karen Tersley, really? Like,
I simply cannot. I simply cannot.
I know. And I don't know why you would ever want to, really, because she's just amazing. So, all right, Hayden, what else you got for Chuck here?
So I've got a couple of things. So the book, the chapters and kind of how you've separated the content, I feel like I know I'm oversimplifying when I say this. But I feel like a lot of your chapters are focused on how do you bring the right people in? And then there are a lot of chapters that are focused on, okay, you've brought these people in, how do you develop them further? And do you feel like so you've got kind of those two buckets, right? Do you feel like businesses miss on one of those more than the other? Maybe they're not bringing in the right people, but they're really good at developing, or they're bringing in people that they think are good, but they're not maybe developing them, towards their future. Do you feel like there's one thing that businesses miss on that you feel like that's why you wanted to put an emphasis on it in your book? Or talk to us a little bit about that.
That's a great question, Hayden. It's really two different things, two separate things. Okay, if you take a look at, and I touched on this just a moment ago, if you take a look at many entrepreneurs' experience with hiring, most of us don't really know what we're doing. Okay, we're out there hoping we luck out into bringing the right person on board, and a lot of times it is just that. But we don't. We don't know how to go about the process of identifying the skill sets, the cultural fit and the drive that we need in the people that we want to move our businesses forward. Many of us are in pain at that moment. We're just trying to fog a mirror and get somebody on board to take some of this pain away. So that's critical that we understand what goes into hiring, identifying and hiring the right people for the organization. That's a separate set of skills. Fortunately, they're learnable. The other side, though, has to do with developing the people on board. And most entrepreneurs, and I think I can say that with safety, most entrepreneurs have huge hearts. We like Katie said earlier, we like people to like us. And we also like to do well by the people that we hire. And so we bring people on, we don't know how to develop them, yet we ask them to do jobs that need to be done. They may never have been trained in that. They may not even like doing it, but many of them do it because of their loyalty to us as a person, and they want to make us happy. But the challenge is that when we get beyond the technical skills, and in the cleaning and restoration industry, most of that revolves around cleaning and drying things. Most of us aren't going to be good at accounting or selling, so we don't know how to train those skills. But once we get beyond that, we don't really know where to go with developing them. We don't know how to develop them as leaders. We don't know how to help them become the best versions of themselves so that they can truly contribute to our organizations. And when we learn that, and when they're able to do that, that is when we're able to take the weight, some of the weight off of our shoulders, because they can do those things without us having to look over their shoulders. But it was only because we helped develop them as leaders or supervisors or managers, however you want to title that, in our organizations. Both of those, learning how to hire and learning how to develop people, are learnable skills. They're not necessarily talent, some talent, but it's mostly skills. And so as an owner, that's one of the things that we need to be working on as our businesses start to grow, once we get beyond that first couple people.
Yeah. I love it that you talked about it as a skill that can be developed. Like, I think I would probably say that most entrepreneurs, when they start their business, like you described, cleaning and restoration industry especially, they're owner operators, right? So they're out there on the trucks, on the vans, cleaning, drying out, doing things like that. And so they're probably not great at, like you said, the accounting, the bookkeeping, the sales, right? Maybe that's not where what their background is in. And some of those other skills are like, developing people and hiring, right? So like there are skills there that you're going to need to learn if you want to continue to grow your business. And I've always thought about, like, your business is going to really grow when you can stop working in the business and can start working on the business. I can't remember who said that. Might have been Katie. I don't know. Somebody said that to me.
No, somebody way smarter than me. No.
Somebody said that. And I think those are some skills that as you start working more on your business, not in your business, those are some skills you can focus on, right? Like, how can I hire better people? And then what can I do to help them continue on their path of growth? It probably is building a better system than just, hey, go follow Bob around for a few weeks and you'll figure out your job, right? There's probably a better system that you need to work on, because that's so much cleaning and restoration is be like, okay, we're going to stick you in this truck with so-and-so and you're just going to follow them around for a few weeks and good luck, And I think there's probably some better skills and development there than just that. So,
and Hayden, we've really seen that from both sides of the spectrum. And Katie, you've probably observed this too. You take a look at the technician, the guy who decided out on his own, what Gerber referred to as an entrepreneurial seizure. He's doing restoration work for somebody else, decides one day, you know what, I can do this better than that guy. And then he realized, holy cow, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And so that's the one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is somebody who had a professional career prior to buying maybe a franchise or starting a restoration or cleaning business. So they were in corporate America, and now all of a sudden they're in small business America. All those skills do not translate. And all of a sudden they're finding themselves without the staff to hand things off to. It is now their responsibility to do all this minutia. And they're having a totally different appreciation for cash flow. Before it was just a word, and there were fancy accounting terms that went with it. Now all of a sudden it's checks in the mailbox, and it's meeting a payroll, and it's meeting my mortgage payment. It becomes very real, very fast. So it comes from both ends.
I love that. Those were some things that I think kind of stood out to me, especially when you're looking at your book and just kind of how you've structured it. Like, I think those are some skills that I think a lot of business owners are going to learn from your book. I think those, especially those two big things. How do I hire the right people, and how do I develop them even further? I think that, again, those are skills that I think are often missed, and I think there's some good knowledge in the book for that. So that's what really, I think, kind of impacted me. But for you, Chuck, are there any other chapters that are like maybe your favorites that you like really want to make sure we kind of mention today? Are there any others that really just kind of stand out to you as far as like these were maybe I don't know if it's the hardest to write or they were the easiest to write? You're like, oh, I knew I got to get these in there when I go to publish this book.
We've already touched on two of them. One of them is positional succession planning. That's critically important. And if you look at it from a realistic perspective, when you're starting your business, you're not even thinking in those terms. Well, I guess you are. You're thinking, I want to get off the truck. And so you're trying to get somebody trained to succeed you on the truck. And then as the business continues to grow, a lot of times we don't have the funds to get into a formal development program for our people. So we let that slide, for survival reasons. But we can never start that soon enough. And especially as you're looking at growing your business beyond just the startup phase or the growth stages, and you're thinking about the end game, whatever that looks like, whether you're going to pass it on to your family member, sell it off to somebody else, whatever you're going to do. But developing those people to backstop you and to help you be a better business owner and to help you be a better business leader are critical to the ultimate disposition of your business. Disposition meaning, what am I going to do with it? The other one though is owner impact. And yeah, I probably, having been a business owner for, I even shudder to say this, over half a century, you come to recognize, sometimes too late or very late in the game, just the impact that we have on the people around us that we don't even see. We're not even aware of it. Many times we don't provide the environment that people feel safe bringing it to us, so we never hear it. We just think everything's rosy until people leave. And sometimes we don't realize the good things that we're doing for our organizations that people truly appreciate. We don't see them because we're so busy trying to meet a payroll, trying to grow sales, that we overlook them. So I think that those two chapters, in my opinion, those are two cornerstones to the whole idea of forging a dynasty business, being observant of them and becoming better at them.
That second chapter that he was talking about, Katie, sounds a lot like what we've put a big emphasis on this year, which is like learning emotional intelligence and how to communicate with our teammates. And like, there's some pieces there to what you're talking about, that there's more to developing like a positive company culture than like pizza parties, or you know what I mean? Or like, yeah. There's more to that than even just their wage, right? There's more to it than that. And I think you've got to look for some ways to make sure you've got a company culture that's going to keep people around, right? It's going to keep employees from burning out. And there are ways to do that without, just buying them lunch occasionally or buying them a drink or something, right? Like there's more to it than that. And, we put a big emphasis on that with emotional intelligence trainings that we've done. We're doing a leadership training right now. We're focusing on a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. And that book talks a lot about, yeah, it's
so good.
It's so good, right?
Isn't that the Harbinger?
Yep.
Yeah.
The Harbinger Institute, right? Wrote that book. This one, it might be a revamp because it's got 2.0 on it. Yep. And I never read the 1.0 version, but it's awesome. And one of the things they talk about is, getting outside the box and start viewing people as people. And I think your book talks about that in the exact same way, that people are people. They're not numbers on a spreadsheet. They're not an asset like you talked about, that or whatever, right? Like they are people that have wants and desires and dreams. And if we can help them be more successful people, they're going to be more successful employees. And I think, a piece to that is, how can we develop our emotional intelligence? How can we increase the capacity of our leaders to help employees? All of that is going to make our businesses more successful. So
it's interesting you'd say that. We talk about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, management kind of thing, empathy. And when you read it in a book, it sounds really good, right? And I can grasp this concept. Katie, in the work that you've done, okay, and the work that we do, really, we're in a very privileged seat because we have people talk about those things in a non-academic way. They talk about it in real life, and it's raw when we get it. And we're not going to get that. We're not going to get that input in a survey. We're not going to get it in a classroom. It's got to be somebody experiencing it to really appreciate what not being emotionally intelligent is about. Because when you're talking to a client, they'll let you know, okay? Either because we're not being emotionally intelligent or because they're facing a situation in their own business where they need to draw on it. But what a lab, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, I think one of the greatest privileges of being a business owner is having the opportunity really to have people trust you. I guess, with their livelihoods, right? If you think about it, people trust you with, 8, 10, 12 hours of their day where they'll come and work for you. They trust you to pay them to put food on their table. And it's a privilege, honestly, that I think as entrepreneurs, we get to do that, have people that trust us to do that. And in return, we have the opportunity to help them elevate their lives, help them see more potential in themselves than maybe they realized they were there. And that's an extremely fulfilling and rewarding opportunity. And so, just a privilege, to associate with people like you and read books like this and rub shoulders with other businesses that are doing it in the industry. And so appreciate you coming on the podcast today, Chuck, and doing it. And maybe, take a minute and tell people where they can find your book. And we're gonna be telling people on social media for the next little while all the reasons why they should go get it, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, Katie, I think I'm going to rewrite the conclusion of the book and put in there exactly what you just got done saying, because that articulates it beautifully. Here's the book.
Oh, love it.
Forging Dynasty Businesses. You can find it on Amazon. You can also find it at Business Expert Press, BEP. I think it's BEP.com. That's the publisher. And it will also be available on all the other channels that you typically buy your books.
Love it. That's a great way to close things out. And Chuck, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast. This is the second time we've had you on, and every time you come on, I feel like I'm filled with more knowledge. I feel like you end up sharing a lot of your wisdom with us, and the first time I ever met you was the first time we sat down and recorded a podcast. And when we stopped recording and left afterwards, I was talking to Katie, and I was like, I get why everybody loves Chuck. Chuck is awesome. Chuck is just the best. And so I just want to say thanks again. And this was awesome. We got a lot of awesome knowledge, both about your book, but just about, owning a business in general and being an entrepreneur. And so, again, I just really appreciate it, and we hope to have you on again in the future. So,
Hayden, Katie, thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Chuck. Congratulations on the book. It's excellent.
Thanks.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.